Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the Junction. So, welcome, Cathie. This is going to be just a one-on-one interview today because on Sunday at the Junction, when we were discussing it, ebb and flows, the universe is like, hey, let's just throw an ebb in there. And our system
Mhm.
crashed. So, we missed some really, really great content that it just, what was going on for me after is I couldn't let it rest. I really wanted your message out there.
Mm.
And so I'm like, let's do this. Let's see how it goes. And
Yeah,
here we go. So out of an ebb,
here we are.
we got created something brand new. This would not have happened had we not had that technical difficulty on Sunday.
Right. It's
So
all perfect.
it is really right. And I love trying something new, and this is new for me. So grow, 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 right? So Sunday, our topic was ebb and flow, as I've said already. And I thought it was really fitting that you were a guest on Sunday. And the reason being
Thank
is
you.
so number one, you are a best-selling author of Your Suicide Didn't Kill Me. And
Mhm.
it's a pretty heavy topic of a book, but share a little bit about why the book and your circumstance around it.
Mhm. So I will repeat this. I said it on Sunday, but Sunday, September the 10th, was actually International Suicide Awareness Day. So I thought it was so perfect that you had asked me to be a guest on the Junction today on a day that the whole world was acknowledging that suicide happens. So I am a best-selling author. My book became a bestseller on Amazon in two categories when it was launched in September of 2022. One of the areas was new releases of the psychology of suicide, and the other one was in depression. Um, it took me 9 years to write this book. So a little bit of background there. My background is that I'm a social worker, and my first husband died by suicide in December of the year 2000. And even though I was trained in suicide prevention, work with kids that had died by suicide, I was blindsided when my husband Brian died by suicide just just before Christmas of the year 2000. Um, it's been quite a healing process, and in the year 2013, I uh, actually went to an angel reader who said, "You're going to write a book, and it's going to be very successful." And I was like, "Yeah, right." Um, and it took me 9 years to write and publish the book because it's a very personal, very vulnerable book, and it's all about the ebbs and flows in my life. Being a survivor of suicide um, brings on a whole new level of grief. In 2022, I became a certified grief educator so that I can help share the message about grief with all kinds of people. And as I'm not just talking about being a survivor of suicide loss, but grief in general. And I think that we have all grieved in all kinds of ways. Maybe we've lost a partner or a child or a dog, or we've lost our job. There's been some sort of loss. You don't get to be, you know, an adult without experiencing some form of loss. Maybe your childhood friend moved away or doesn't want to talk to you anymore. So there's grief all over the place. So my message about ebb and flow is, yeah, there's been a lot of ebb, but there's been a lot of flow in my life. And I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't have written the book if I wasn't able to get into that flow.
And I think it points to that, like you said, life isn't linear and it's a process. Like from when Brian passed in 2000 to 2013, when you started writing the book or created that, there must have been so many moments of ebbs and flows. Speak to a little bit before you got to the book part, like just for people who are grieving themselves, like really
Mhm.
getting in that there is an ebb and it's okay to be in an ebb.
Absolutely. And I would say one thing is it really takes a village. Like I didn't get through those ebbs on my own. I had a community, I had friends that helped me. And the biggest way that they helped me was by listening, and listening from a place of not wanting to react or tell their story, but really from a place of just listening. And sometimes I had to tell the story over and over and over again, because when I was deep in grief, I couldn't remember who I had told the story to, or I just needed to say it again or relive it again. And that was really part of the healing. Um, so one of the big things that you'll notice that I say is died by suicide. So that's I don't make anybody wrong for saying the word committed suicide, but suicide is not a crime in Canada. In most places in the world, it's not a crime. So the language around suicide is to say someone died by suicide, and it's has less of an activation for survivors of suicide loss. You'll notice that I said the word activate. That's because when you say the word triggered, sometimes that will trigger somebody if they have a loved one that's died um, by gunfire. So I know part of it is like, oh gosh, are we getting so politically correct? But I think it comes down to kindness. You just don't know who's in the room. And by watching our language, we can really make a difference by not activating somebody.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned too, like support around you was really important.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Yeah.
if someone is around someone dealing with grief, like what's some tips that they can do to feel like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to help them, like in like you had mentioned and on Sundays, like how many lasagnas do you need, right? Like because people it's like I don't know, like,
Right.
right? Like so like
Yeah.
what other
Yeah.
ways can be
What
beneficial?
other ways?
What other
Right. So
ways?
exactly. Because, yeah, people wanted to help. And lasagna is a comfort food. And I had a whole freezer full of lasagna. And so my friend Donna sort of became my hub. And she started telling people, come and ask me, and I'll let you know what Cathie needs, rather than just assuming that I needed more lasagna. I mean, my kids and I certainly loved the lasagna. We had a lot of fun with it. But other than the listening, I think other ways that you can really help is I had people say, if you need anything, just call. When you are deep in grief or you're deep in your ebb, the last thing that is, I was already feeling vulnerable, and to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you do this for me? I couldn't do it, could not do it. So what could be really, and it was really helpful is having people say, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need milk? Need some bread? Um, I'm going to pick up the kids after school. Do you want me to pick up your daughter? Right. So those kinds of things of not putting the onus back on the grieving person, and just really being that helpful space.
Mhm.
The other thing is people rubbernecking and wanting to know really what's going on, right? Close friends. I mean, I never shied away from saying that Brian died by suicide. Right from the get-go, I knew people were going to be talking about it, and I thought, they're not going to talk behind my back. I'm going to name it that it was suicide. And so even in his funeral, we named that it was suicide. Because with my background in social work, I realized this is something that we shy away from talking about.
Mhm.
It's painful to talk about grief. It's painful to talk about being vulnerable, and we don't want to we don't want to talk about suicide. Um,
I think
yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I think I haven't been able to let this go this week is that mental health and talking openly about this, like really noticing that 10 years ago, like not even maybe 5 years ago, they wouldn't say suicide on media, like they're really hiding it. And it creates almost like a shameful environment. And
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
be able to talk openly about it allows that to bust up and have real vulnerable conversations with people. And even if we can't have it with the person directly, like someone who is, in a depression or having suicidal thoughts, like, um, we as people maybe next to them, how can we be of benefit? How can we support them during those ebb moments for themselves? But also, how can we ensure that we're protecting ourselves too? And like, because we may have our own set of thoughts and ebbs around it, around family members and friends who are vulnerable.
Right. And that's a great point. Do you have the capacity or the bandwidth to be a listener, to be an active listener? And maybe you're not. And maybe just knowing that you can refer them to text 988 in Canada or the United States, right? That they can talk to somebody who is trained in talking to somebody who is suicidal. Um, yeah, just because they're close to you doesn't mean that you have the skills or the bandwidth, because
Mhm.
you're probably, you're going through your own stuff as well. And I'll be honest that I had a lot of people that were there for the funeral and then I never saw them again, right? And that they just, yeah, for whatever reason, that they couldn't be there for me.
Yeah.
And I had to accept that they're going through their own stuff. I don't know what they're
Yeah.
going through.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like for our own selves checking in and seeing, like, is this something I can be around? Like, death
Mhm,
itself could be something that someone really is uncomfortable about. And which I think
mhm,
kind of points to grief education. Like, you don't have to
mhm,
be in the profession to take on a course like this, where just can you learn to be with grief in different ways, can have us grow to being able to have the capacity to listen, and um
mhm,
in that
mhm.
way.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think anybody can do this. But it takes something. It takes a commitment to just be that space and to check in with yourself, right? If it's becoming too much, then you need to speak up and just say, I love you. I, want to be here to support you, and I need to take care of myself. And so here's maybe some other resources that you can tap into. And then once you do that, that doesn't mean that you have to cut off all communication.
Hmm. And I think too, there's this sense of honoring yourself, honoring where
Mhm,
you're at, and
mhm,
and also, if you yourself have past history, like, can you leave that behind and just be with the person and not
mhm.
inflicting your own experience, as well.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And that's what I was talking about, that most people listen so that they can respond. Like when somebody's talking, you're thinking, okay, what's something wise that I can say? Or, what can I contribute? Well, how can I tell my story too? And that is probably the worst thing that you can do with somebody who's in the thick of grief,
Yeah.
is they haven't got the capacity to hear your story. And what it does is it diminishes what they're saying. So it's a challenge, but sometimes it's just really pays to shut up and listen.
Yeah. And I like too that the idea of, if someone's in an ebb, the experience for them is it is tangled, it's messy, it's heavy. There's so many multiple emotions, and being that sounding board for someone, like you said, just being a listener can be a space
Mm-hmm.
for them to work through what they're feeling. May not have
Yeah,
answers, but at least it's
yeah,
an access.
right. And the other thing is letting them know when you see that, celebrate with them the little wins,
Mm,
that you acknowledge when hey, you know, I'm trying to give an example here. Hey, it's great that you're out and about.
yeah.
You're grocery shopping. You're doing something, whatever it is, to acknowledge the wins along the way. I think is really important, because I think sometimes being in grief, you forget to celebrate your wins.
Mhm.
And there will be wins. There will be,
And
one
that's
foot in front of the other. And that's the thing about ebbs, right? Ebbs and flows is you don't just jump from the ebb into the flow. It's step by step by step by step, one step forward. Sometimes it's a couple steps back, but you have that forward momentum.
And I think, like we shared on Sunday, the ebb is its own special place where there can be there. That's a real great place of healing. And when there is growth there's this pull to move into flow. And yes, not to forget that when we're in the flow, to really look back, take a moment and say, look how far I've come, or look at the wind.
Mm,
One day it may be I made my bed, or I brushed my teeth, and that's everything to celebrate. And so when you started writing the book 2013, was it a straight shot to success, or was there ebbs and flows there?
Oh
Hard to know
gosh,
this
there's just a
answer.
few ebbs and flows along the way. Like I said, it took 9 years to write the book. There were 2 years in there I didn't even touch the book. And I did think about it, but I didn't open it up on my screen. I did no work on it. And that's because I married my now husband. And I could not, or chose not to, work on the book about my first husband, Brian, when I was building a relationship with my new husband. But it was actually my new husband who said, my now husband, Dick, that said, I think you should finish the book. And he became a champion for me to get the book done. And I give him a lot of credit, because I think that there's a lot of men that would feel threatened um, by what I was doing. And he just saw the value and saw the purpose of me wanting to make a difference in the world. And he knew that was important to me. And he became one of my biggest cheerleaders. I mean, I've had a lot of cheerleaders along the way, but he was certainly one of my biggest cheerleaders. And the book was edited, I don't know, about 15 times. People say, oh, you're a great writer. It's like, do you know how many times this book was edited by other people, and they come back to me and I do an edit, it would go to somebody else and somebody else. My daughter did a level of the editing as well. So it really took a village to put the book together.
What I'm hearing from that too is, like you said, when there's people that are close to you, like it's almost like their opinion matters more, So if you are close to someone who's in an ebb, being their cheerleader, we may never know just how that support can land, like really help them in those times of ebbs. And it's like, just what can we celebrate today together? Like, let's go out and go for a walk, and just being that person's support, whether it's verbal or, like you said, you interested in a walk, like let's try it, or go for a drive, or like anything to just, really celebrating successes. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
So what is new for you now? Like, you've got your book out, and first of all, where can people purchase the book?
Oh, thanks. You can get it on Amazon, Canada, US, UK. You can also go through my website, www.yoursuicidedidn'tkillme.com, and that will have links in there. But yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, that's where you get it.
Yeah. And then, so what are you working on now? Like, what's opened up for you?
Okay, so just recently I experienced had another experience with Ebb and Flow. I was asked to put together a leadership workshop, and my initial reaction was like, oh, I know a lot about leadership. I've been doing personal development for years and years. But I kind of said, hey, maybe you can ask a friend of mine. And the person who was asking me to do it said, nope, I want you to do it. And I had an amazing experience of putting together 3 workshops around leadership and delivering them. And I just feel so empowered by that I have already started. I've got 4 outlines for grief workshops. 3 for full-day workshops and 1 for a 2-day retreat. So it's been sort of on the back burner thinking about putting that together, and putting together the leadership workshop was like, okay, this isn't rocket science that I thought it was, and I have a lot to bring to the table. A lot of information to bring to the table.
Well, and your unique gift of all that you've gained through these years too, and your
Mm.
social work and your all the personal development and your personal story, like really makes it such a unique and powerful leadership course. So that's exciting that that's coming soon. So what do you say to someone who's in like a big ebb right now and they're working their way
That's
to
a
get to flow?
great question. First of all, I would say don't panic. It may feel kind of like quicksand. And I mean, there's all kinds of emotions that might come up when you're in an ebb, might be anger, be depression, could be darn near anything. And first and foremost, breathe. I think sometimes we forget to just stop and take a deep breath. And I talked a bit about, the one step at a time. I think also what you could do even before you get to an ebb is create yourself a little ebb toolkit, right? That when I'm in an ebb, here are the positive messages that I'm going to give myself. Maybe it's writing on a mirror. Maybe there's certain rituals that you have. Maybe there's prayers that you say. There might be anything that you do, but have those set up ahead of time so that when you're feeling in the ebb and feeling like, "Ugh, I'm never going to get out of this," pull out your toolkit.
Mhm.
One of the things that I have learned about suicide is that suicide is not a choice. It's that the suicidal person has nothing left in their toolkit, and the only thing in front of them is suicide. So create your own emotional, mental toolkit, whatever that's going to look like for you, so that when you're in an ebb, pull it out. And if that doesn't work, phone a friend and yeah, or call 98 or text 988.
And I'm also hearing too that everyone has ebbs, and it's not like, well, everyone has them, then therefore just accept it. But there is a bit of maybe shame still that we have in our culture around ebbs are
Mhm,
not
mhm,
good, flow is good. And that's really where the awareness I'm wanting to bring is that everyone has ebbs and everyone has a journey and everyone's dealing with it. And so, like letting go of any shame and just sinking into
mhm,
it and being with it
mhm,
already
mhm,
is like
mhm.
such a difference. So yes,
Absolutely. And I love the saying that before every breakthrough, there's a breakdown. And it's in that breakdown that's the ebb. And I just know for myself, when I feel myself coming out of that ebb, just that and moving into the flow is such an empowering feeling of just kind of taking a mental picture. What does that feel like when I've been feeling all kind of in the ebb and then I get into the flow and that release, it just feels so good.
one of the
Mhm.
stickers I have in my office is something amazing is happening just around the corner. And it's, in those times when it just feels so heavy, it almost feels like it's going to last forever. And then forgetting
Mhm.
that no, ebbs and flows are always happening. And so something amazing is always around the corner. And can we just take it moment by moment? Like, what can I do to get through this moment and work from there
Right.
and
And I've
breathe?
heard you say that before, and I'm embracing that because sometimes I get into comparison. Well, this happened for somebody else. Why isn't it happening for me? And then when I learned that from you, something amazing is just around the corner. It's like, well, maybe something different is right around the corner for me. And then somebody else will go, I want what she's having.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
The
Yeah.
infectious,
Mhm.
like, yeah. And when we share with each other what it is that's happening, it's infectious. It's inspiring. And it's
Mhm.
awesome. Another way to help us pull out of the ebb. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank
Mhm.
you so much for your time. I
Oh,
appreciate it so much. I'm glad we were able to connect, and I'm excited to get this message out, and so we can
yeah.
really um, yeah, just open up the lines of communication around a really important topic. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kelsey, for holding the space for what I agree is a very important topic. And I love what you're doing at the Junction today.
Thank you.